Britain's grand ambitions often end in disappointment. High-speed rail, new nuclear power stations, and sprawling housing developments are consistently promised. But what we get are projects that are years late, billions over budget, or simply cancelled altogether. It's a familiar cycle of announcement and apology, a national story of frustration that leaves many wondering if Britain has simply lost the ability to build. This isn't just about a few isolated failures, it's a pattern. From the ever-escalating costs of HS2 to the slow-motion collapse of nuclear plans and the chronic undersupply of housing, the evidence is everywhere. The problem isn't a lack of money, nor is it a shortage of skilled engineers or brilliant architects. The real issue is far deeper, embedded in the very system designed to manage these projects. The truth is, Britain's failure to build is not an accident but a product of its own design. The country is trapped in a complex web of rules, incentives, and bureaucratic processes that inadvertently reward, delay, and penalize decisive action. To understand why Britain can't build, you have to look past the headlines and examine the hidden architecture of the system that actively stops it. Let's start with the most visible obstacle, the planning and regulatory system. In theory, this system exists to ensure projects are safe, sustainable, and have local consent. But in practice, it has morphed into a formidable barrier to progress. The process is so complex and open-ended that it invites endless legal challenges and strategic objections from a vocal minority, effectively giving them a veto over nationally significant infrastructure. A single legal challenge, whether from a well-funded campaign group or a local council, can halt a multi-billion-pound project for years. This isn't about genuine consultation. It's about procedural warfare, where opponents exploit the system's own complexity to grind development to a halt. The result is a state of permanent uncertainty, where developers and investors face years of delays and mounting legal costs before a single shovel can hit the ground. This culture of planning paralysis means projects are designed not for efficiency or speed, but for defensibility in court. Every decision is made with the threat of judicial review in mind, leading to exhaustive, defensive, and incredibly expensive preliminary work. The system, intended to manage risk, has become the single biggest risk itself, making it almost impossible to deliver projects on time or on budget. Beneath the planning battles lies another powerful force of inertia, Treasury short-termism. The UK Treasury operates on tight, cyclical funding cycles that are fundamentally at odds with the long-term nature of major infrastructure projects. A new power station or railway line requires consistent, predictable investment over a decade or more, but the Treasury's focus is often limited to the next 3 to 5 years. This short-term outlook creates a culture of profound risk aversion. For a Treasury official, the safest bet is always to say no, as approving a project that goes over budget can be a career-ending mistake, while blocking a project that never gets built carries almost no personal penalty. This incentive structure systematically filters out bold, long-term investments in favor of smaller, safer, and less transformative initiatives. The constant cycle of spending reviews adds another layer of chaos, with funding commitments for long-term projects frequently questioned, reduced, or withdrawn. This stop-start funding creates massive inefficiencies, demotivates project teams, and signals to the private sector that the government is not a reliable long-term partner. The economics of short-term thinking ultimately make projects far more expensive, as uncertainty and delay are priced in by every contractor and investor involved. Compounding these issues is a critical loss of delivery capacity within the state itself. Over the past few decades, Britain has systematically outsourced its engineering, project management, and technical expertise to a small circle of large consultancy firms. The idea was to create a more flexible, market-driven approach, but the long-term consequence has been a hollowing out of the state's own ability to build. Without a permanent, in-house cadre of experienced project leaders and engineers, there is no institutional memory. Lessons learned from one major project are not carried over to the next, because the knowledge resides with transient consultants who move on once their contract is up. This means the state is often a naive client, forced to pay premium rates for advice from the very firms that also stand to profit from construction contracts, creating a clear conflict of interest. This reliance on external consultants means the public sector repeatedly makes the same expensive mistakes. It lacks the deep, specialist knowledge required to effectively scrutinize proposals, challenge cost estimates, and manage complex contracts. Instead of a strong, intelligent client shaping projects in the national interest, The state has become a passive manager of contracts, losing control over both costs and outcomes. Finally, we have to acknowledge the deeply misaligned incentives that pervade the entire system. For many powerful actors, inaction is more profitable than action. The political cycle, for instance, rewards grand announcements and ribbon-cutting ceremonies, not the difficult, multi-year grind of actual delivery, which often spans multiple governments. The property market also plays a perverse role. Britain's restrictive planning laws have created an artificial scarcity of land, driving up property values. This means existing landowners and homeowners often have a strong financial incentive to oppose any new development that might increase supply and dilute the value of their assets, turning local politics into a battleground for protecting property wealth. Finance, too, is structured to favor the status quo. Investing in tangible, long-term infrastructure is seen as risky and illiquid compared to the fast returns available in financial markets or residential property. When the system makes it easier and more profitable to speculate on existing assets than to create new ones, it's no surprise that capital flows away from the vital work of building the country's future. So, when you see another headline about a delayed railway, a cancelled power plant, or a housing target missed, remember that it's not just a simple failure of execution. It's the logical, predictable outcome of a system that is perfectly tuned for inaction. Britain's planning laws, its Treasury orthodoxy, its loss of state capacity, and its skewed financial incentives all combine to form a powerful barrier to progress. This isn't a story about national decline or a lack of ambition. The capability to build world-class infrastructure and homes still exists in Britain, dormant but present. The engineers, planners, and construction workers are ready, but they are trapped within a framework that frustrates their efforts at every turn. The bottom line is this: Britain can build, but it is held back by a hidden system that actively stops it. Unlocking the country's potential requires more than just new policies or extra funding. It demands a fundamental rewiring of the entire machine. Until the incentives are realigned to reward delivery instead of delay, Britain will continue to dream of the future instead of building it.